Hello and welcome to session 5. Let's see what we have for this session. So this is session 5 and we are going to talk about pronouns for today. So in this session, we'll study the word class known as pronouns, and then we'll look at the types, how to identify them, and also look at some rules that we need to apply when we are using pronouns in English. So by the end of this session, I expect that you'll be able to identify and classify the English pronouns and also be able to apply the rules for selecting the right pronoun in whatever situation you find yourself. So this is the link to the slides on pronouns and then another on the pronoun rules. So you read this and then when you are done, you read this one again. So now let's move to the lesson itself. All right. So let's talk pronouns. Now, a pronoun is seen as a word or a phrase that is used as a substitute for a noun or a pronoun. So last week we looked at nouns. Now we are looking at pronouns. And we are saying that pronouns are used to replace nouns or are used in substitute of nouns or noun phrases. And at this level, I'm sure you know what a noun phrase is: a group of words with a noun as a main or the head word. For instance, if we have the girl is a noun phrase because the most important element there is girl, which is a noun. The beautiful girl, same. The most important element there is girl. So it is a noun phrase. So whatever word you use or a word that you can use to replace a single noun or a noun phrase is known as a pronoun. Now, since they're replacing nouns, they can do anything that nouns do, okay? And you find them everywhere you can find a noun. So a pronoun can act as a subject, can act as a direct object, indirect object, or even object of a preposition. And it takes the same place or of a person, a place, an animal, or a thing. Okay, because it can replace a noun in any environment. Now let's look at the types of pronouns. The first type we'll talk about are what we refer to as personal pronouns. And personal pronouns give us this information. A personal pronoun can tell us the person who is talking, okay, or who is being spoken about, who is doing the talking, or who is that person talking about. And when it comes to the person, we can have the first person, which shows the individual who is doing the talking. Then we have the second person, and this refers to the one that the first person is talking to, okay? So first person is talking to second person. And then the third person refers to the person or things which are being spoken about in absentia. So which means that the third person is not present, but he or she is being spoken about, or it is being spoken about. So the first person talks to the second person about the third person. So that is what the person represents in personal pronouns. A personal pronoun can also give us information as to the number of people. So is the pronoun plural or singular? So one person is doing the talking, is it the number of people? It also gives you the gender. Is the person talking feminine or masculine or neuter if it's an animal or something, a thing, like an object? Now, with all this day of homosexuality and all that, and gender presentation and mispresentation, I know somebody will say, what if the person is both male and female? Well, that is not for me to say. Right now, all I'm saying is I'm teaching grammar, not social studies. And in grammar, the pronoun can either be feminine or masculine or neuter if it's an object. So, and also it tells you the position as where you find that pronoun in the sentence. Is there a subject or is it an object? So the personal pronoun gives us a lot of information. And this table summarizes what you would find when you talk about personal pronouns. So we have the number, up here the person, gender, and then also the position, whether it's subject or object. So if a singular person is talking, first person, and it is a male or female, it doesn't matter whether male or female, the subject will be I, the object will be me. If a second person, male or female, it is you. Third person, male, is he, subject, him, object, female, she, subject, her, object, neuter, it, subject, it, object. Now, if it's plural and it's first person, whether male or female, we say we for subject, us for object. For second person, male or female, it's you, subject, same you for object. If it's third person, whether male or female or neuter, subject is they, object is them. Now, these are not new things. You use these all the time. So let's see how they can happen in examples. So for each of these sentences, I've used the subject and the object together. So in the first, I have I like coffee. So I here is a subject and it's a subject position. It counts it is a subject of the sentence. But in John helped me, here me is the object. So it comes in the object position. Do you like coffee? You is subject. And John loves you. You is object. And that goes on and on and on. So you should know where the pronoun you are using is located. If it is subject, it should be in the subject position, and and you should use the right pronoun for that. If it's the object, you should use the object pronoun to indicate that. More examples. It doesn't work. Can a man fix it? It here is both subject and object. Subject, we have we, so we went home. But if its object is Anthony drove us. So we, us, you, they, them. All right. So now let's look at some use of the pronoun it. When you are talking about a single thing, a thing, we almost always use it, right? But there are exceptions. Sometimes we don't use it for things, okay? For instance, we know that there are some people who refer to their pets, some animals, as he or him. They personalize it or personify it, as we say in literature. So then they make it human, they give it some humanness. Then they can use he or she. So there are times you may see he or she, and it's not actually referring to a human being. It could be referring to an animal, for instance. Also, even objects are sometimes, we would expect objects to have the pronoun it, but there are times that they also take the he or she. For instance, ships or even countries are usually described as feminine, and so we use she and her. For example, somebody will say, this is my dog, Rusty. He is an Alsatian. Then you wonder why he's using he when the dog is not human. Then the Titanic was a great ship, but she sank on her first voyage. So she, referring to Titanic, which is a ship, it's like a thing, it's not a human being. Thailand has now opened her border with Cambodia. So her is referring to Thailand and is being described as a female. Now, sometimes when you have a single person, you're talking about a single person, you may not know whether it is a he or a she, right? So when you are not sure, this is what you normally do. You either use both. So if a teacher needs help, we don't know whether the teacher is male or female. So we say, if a teacher needs help, he or she should see the principal. Or you can just hazard it and say, if a teacher needs help, he should see the principal. And gender, people who fight for gender equality will now start giving you trouble. But we know from ages that usually, even when we use he, it could actually be feminine. However, things are changing now. If you are writing and you feel that the pronoun they are going to use would create problems, either you go ahead and say he or she, or you avoid using either of the personal pronouns if you are not sure, and then use the plural rather, so that you say, if a teacher needs help, they should see the principal. Here, you are not contradicting any Beijing conference rules or anything that will get into trouble. If it's a male, they is still fine. If it's a female, they is fine, and you get away with that. Now, we also use it to introduce a remark. So it is nice to have a holiday. It's difficult to find a job. We use it to also talk about the weather, the temperature, time, and distance. It's 50 kilometers from here. It's 9 o'clock. Is it 9 o'clock yet? It will probably be hot tomorrow. It's raining. So we can use it for all these as well. Now let's talk about the possessive pronouns. Now, a possessive pronoun is a word that replaces a noun in a sentence and shows ownership, possession. Remember that when we're describing nouns, we said that only nouns show possession. So now we see that pronouns can also show possession because they also, or they will be replacing the nouns. But there's a slight difference. Whilst it's true that pronouns can take the place of nouns and show possession, we don't use the apostrophe when we are using the pronouns, even though when we are talking about the nouns themselves, we use pronouns. So here you can identify the possessive pronouns by the number, the person, and the gender. If it's number, you're talking about whether it is singular or plural. If it's the person, you are looking at whether it's first person, second person, or third person. And if it's gender, whether it's male or female, or even neuter as well. So let's see. If it's non-human, let's see. If it's first person, doesn't matter the gender, it's mine, okay? And if it's plural, it's ours. If it's second person, it's yours. Second person plural is also yours. Third person singular masculine, his. Third person singular feminine, hers. Third person singular non-human, its. And then third person plural is theirs. So you see that when we look at the possessions here, the pronouns, the possessive pronouns, we don't have any apostrophe s. Ours is ours, our with s. Your is your with s. His, hers, yes, it's the same. We don't add any apostrophe s. So that is, therein lies the difference. Okay, the possession, the possessive pronoun is replacing the possessive noun or the noun and showing its possession, but it doesn't have the apostrophe. Whereas if you are using the noun itself, Kofi's car, you say Kofi with an apostrophe s, car. Now we can use a possessive pronoun instead of a full noun phrase to avoid repeating words. So this is one of the ways that you can use a possessive pronoun. So is it John's car? No, it is mine. Mine here is first person possessive, and it's replacing my car or the car. Okay, so somebody asks, is it John's car? You don't say no, it is my car. You can avoid repeating the whole words and just say it's mine. Whose coat is this? Is it yours? Not whose coat is it? Is it your coat? I mean, maybe children would do that, but I mean, here you know that you can use a possessive pronoun to replace that. Her coat is gray, mine is brown. Not her coat is gray and my coat is brown. I mean, who talks like that? Okay. We can use the possessive pronouns and nouns after all. So in that case, you have something like Susan is one of my friends. Okay, so we have the expression Susan is one of my friends. Here you don't have any possessive pronoun here, but you can say Susan is a friend of mine. Susan is a friend of mine. That is another way you can use the possession after of. All right, so here it's replacing the noun phrase my friend. Okay, one of. So Susan is a friend of mine, not Susan is a friend of me. No, you're using the possession. She belongs to you. She's your friend. So mine. Now, like I've been saying, the possessive pronoun does not take an apostrophe. So watch out when you're using it. I see this a lot on posters and people's writings when they write yours and then they put an apostrophe s. Yours possession, hers possession, ours possession. Doesn't take any apostrophe. Now let's talk about the reflexive pronoun. Now the reflexive pronoun is a pronoun that is used to refer back to the subject of the sentence or the clause. So usually we realize that the reflex is going back. Usually ends with or always ends with self for singular or selves for plural. So the form we have is myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, if it is singular. In plural, we have ourselves, yourselves, themselves. Okay, let's look at some examples. So here we have the possessive pronoun being used to refer back to the subject or the object. I am teaching myself to play the piano. So myself is replacing I. So that is reflexive. It's going back to refer to the subject. Be careful with that knife. You might cut yourself. Yourself is referring to you. All right. We've bought ourselves something to eat. Ourselves referring back to the subject we. They had to cook for themselves. They had to cook for themselves. The same. He was feeling very sorry for himself. Okay. All right. Now, we can also use this reflexive pronoun in a way to show that you are doing something or you are alone. It's showing the individuality of an action or the individuality of a sense of the noun. So the children got dressed by themselves. By saying that the children got dressed by themselves, you are saying, you're implying that they didn't get help from anybody. It was something they did on their own, all right? I prepared the whole meal by myself, meaning that nobody helped me. I managed to do everything by myself. This is another way that you can use a reflexive pronoun, showing alone. Now, there are some kind of reflexive pronouns that we say they are intensive. It's the same reflexive pronouns you're talking about. But here, when we use them, we are using them so as to lay emphasis on the antecedent, all right? You're not replacing anything, but you're laying emphasis. If we look at all that you've done, we still have um, the pronoun or even the noun, and then also you have the reflexive pronoun. It is not actually replacing the pronoun, but it's emphasizing the antecedent, emphasizing the pronoun. So I have I made it myself, okay, or I myself made it. See, so when you do it that way, it emphasizes it makes it stronger. It shows the aloneness or the intensity of what you did. Have you yourself seen it? The person could have easily asked, have you seen it? Eh? Have you seen it? But if the person says, have you yourself seen it? Or have you seen it yourself? You feel the weight, the intensity of what is being said. The president himself, here you see the president himself promised to stop the war. It means nobody else did it, it was the president. And we still have the noun that the noun is that, well, we have a noun phrase, the president. And yes, we have himself further given its weight, emphasizing the pronoun and also giving us some form of intensity. So here with the reflexive pronouns, we have the the noun there, and the reflexive pronoun is there to emphasize it. And that is what we call intensive pronouns. All right. Okay. Then we have what we call the relative pronouns. Now the relative pronouns are used to introduce relative clauses. Okay. And the relative clauses, what they do is that they tell us more about people or things. So here too, we talk about the position, whether it's a subject, object, and if it's a possessive as well. So if it's the subject position and it is human, we use who. If it is non-human, we use which. If it's human or not, we can use that. So that goes for both. For the object, if it's human, you can use who or whom if you want to be very formal, which is still for non-human. That can be for both human and non-human. And for possessive, we have whose. We use whose. So let's look at some examples. The person who, now the who here is referring to the person, right? Or the person who did something. The person, so you can say the person who, or you can say the person that. The person who phoned me last night is my teacher. The car which, now the car is an object, it's non-human, so we can use which or that. The car which hit me was yellow. You can't use which with a human being. So the person which came here, that's total disrespect, sorry. We don't use which with people, all right? The person whom I phoned, so when you use whom, you're being formal, extra formal, okay, and it's showing the object position, the person whom I called, okay. The student whose phone, now this is possession, the student whose phone just rang, should stand up. So here you're showing possession, and the possession or the possessive relative pronoun is whose. Now we have for non-defining relative clauses. So we have Mrs. Pratt, whom I like very much. So you see, the sentence was just Mrs. Pratt is my teacher. But now we are putting in something to give it more information, and that is non-defining, okay? Mrs. Pratt, whom I like very much, is my teacher. Whom, so we are being formal here. We could have said Mrs. Pratt, who I like very much, is my teacher. But if you use whom, it makes it more formal. And then the car, which I was driving at the time, suddenly caught fire. So which is being used for the car, which is an object, okay? My brother, whose phone you just heard, is a doctor, okay? Whose possession. Then we have pronouns referred to as demonstrative pronouns. Now, the demonstrative pronouns are this, that, these, and those. And all these are pronouns that replace nouns. Demonstrative pronouns are used to replace specific people or things that have been previously mentioned or are understood from context. So you've already mentioned a pronoun, you don't want to use that pronoun anymore, you can use a demonstrative pronoun in that's a pronoun's place. They are typically deictic. What does it mean? When you say that something is deictic in grammar, it means that it is not very defined. The definition or the meaning depends on the particular frame of reference, the time, the number, the people, whatever. So it's dependent on something. It's not fixed. It's deictic. Sometimes we say that it even gives direction as to how many, where the person is standing, the time of day, and all that. So if we say that demonstrative pronouns are deictic, this is what you mean. It depends on who you are talking about, where the person is standing, how close the person is to you. All these things determine how you use the demonstrative pronouns and your choice of demonstrative pronouns. So the demonstrative pronouns tells us whether it is replacing something that is singular or whether it is plural, and whether that thing is close by you or further away. Let's see how happens. Now we use this and that to represent singular nouns. This and that to represent singular nouns. We use this if there's something, the noun you're talking about is close by. So we are looking at proximity, basis, right? So this is very smelly, means that's whatever it is you're talking about is close to you. But that is used when the thing is further away from you. So you can smell that from here. So that thing that we are smelling is far away, and yet we are here and we can smell it. Then these and those represent plural nouns. These are used when the object is close by. Those are used when it's farther away. So these smell rotten. Maybe I'm holding the thing in my hand and I'm saying, these smell rotten, but do not paint those. I'll be pointing out what those are because they are not close to me, they are farther away. Then we have reciprocal pronouns. Reciprocal pronouns. We use reciprocal pronouns with each of two or more subjects. When each of two or more subjects is acting in the same way towards the other. So when two things are acting the same way towards each other, we use the reciprocal pronouns to replace them. So what we are saying is that A is talking to B, for instance, and B is talking to A. So we say that A and B are talking to each other, right? It's reciprocal. It's going both directions. It's going both ways. The action is reciprocal. John talks to Mary and Mary talks to John. I give you a present and you give me a present. It's reciprocal. Now there are two reciprocal pronouns in English. We have each other and one another. Each other is used in a sentence where there is need to show two people performing the same action, whereas one another is used where we have more than two people performing the same action. So example, John and Mary love each other. Means John loves Mary, Mary loves John. Peter and David hate each other. Peter hates David, David hates Peter. So it's reciprocal and it goes both ways. And then we have one another where you have more than two. The 10 prisoners were all blaming one another. The gangsters were fighting one another. So one another is when you have more than two. Each other is used when you have only two, and it's reciprocal. We can also use the reciprocal pronoun with possessive forms. Here we use the apostrophe S. All right. So if it's showing possession, for instance, Mira and Sina can wear each other's bangles. So this means that Mira can wear Sina's bangles. Sina can wear Mira's bangles. So both of them can wear each other's bangles. The same for one another. Sports persons can wear one another's clothes, if that is true. Yeah. Then we have interrogative pronouns. Now, interrogative pronoun is a pronoun that is used in order to ask a question. Okay, some of them refer only to people. So we have like who, and then some can be used to refer to both human beings and objects, like what. With interrogative pronouns, they don't distinguish between singular and plural. We don't have interrogative pronoun for singular subjects or singular nouns and then one for plural. We use the same form for both. And interrogative pronouns produce information questions that require more than a yes or no. So what are you? You can't say yes. Who is sitting over there? You can't say no. So it requires more than yes or no. You need to provide more information. The main interrogative pronouns are who, whom, whose, which, and what. And here I said the main interrogative pronouns, all right? Sometimes we add another one. In addition, these pronouns may take the suffixes ever or soever, so that we can have whoever, whomever, whichever, whatever, or whosoever, whomsoever, whatsoever. We don't use these as often as they used to be used long time ago. So there is a form. If it's a subject, is who. If the object is whom. If it's a subject non-human, you can use which. If it's a subject human or even non-human, you can use that. So this is what I've just explained. What can be used to talk about objects or people? What time is it? What is your name? What do you want? Which can be used people or objects. Which chair are you using? Sorry. Which jumper do you like? Which is your mother? Who? So you remember that when we're talking about another kind of pronouns, which was used for objects alone. But as interrogative pronouns for questions, you can use them for whether they are human or object. Who can be used, but when you use who in particular, who is generally reserved for humans alone. Who can, yeah. Who are you? Who is your mother? Who's been sitting in my chair? Whose is showing possession? Whose is this book? Whose car did you drive? And then whom is more formal. Whom is used, you can use whom or who. But when you use whom, you are being more formal. Whom did you phone? For whom did you vote? All right. For whom did you vote? Not whom did you vote for. We'll explain why very later on. Now, the interrogative pronouns with the suffix ever are used for emphasis or to show surprise, and they are quite rare. Like I said, we don't see them. You may find them in old texts, old books, the Bible, whosoever, this and that, and also, but you don't find people writing or using them very often these days. So whoever would want to eat such a grass, then whatever did you say to show surprise, to show emphasis, can use them. Then we have quantifier pronouns. Now, quantifiers, as the name implies, tell us something about the amount or quantity of a noun, okay, or something. But in this particular situations that we are talking about pronouns, they tell us the amount or quantity of a noun. sometimes they are also referred to as indefinite pronouns. So when you're reading and you come across indefinite pronouns, they are actually the same as quantifier pronouns. So quantifier pronouns or quantifiers express with something as small or large. So few, many, all right. Also, some show a part of. So most, some show all of, all. Now, when we are discussing determinants, you see these quantifiers being part of another class. Okay, so we have quantifiers that are pronouns, quantifiers that are also used as determinants. We'll talk about that later when we are dealing with determinants. Now, quantifiers can be a singular word or a phrase. So if you have quantifiers that are complex, or we call them complex quantifiers, it's not just one word, it's a phrase. So a few is a complex quantifier. A little is quantifier, complex quantifier. Lots of, complex quantifier. But we have quite a number of simple quantifiers like all, another, any, both, neither, no, several, some, and so many more. And that brings us to the end of our discussion on pronouns. The next is we are going to talk about the rules, pronoun rules. So give me some few minutes for me to open that as well. Pronoun rules. How to use the pronouns in English. It's not easy. Sometimes we mess them up, and you see how that happens very soon. I'm still looking for my pronoun rules. Give me some few more seconds. Okay. Let's see if we can access it now. Still no. Okay. Just hold on. It's just refusing to open. All right. Let's see if that's this one. Okay. Let's just let me remove some of the things I've opened so that to be visible. Okay. I don't want to open it from Sakai. It takes a longer time when I do that. So I'm trying to avoid doing that. So just give me a moment. Hope it works this time. Still isn't working. Well, I wonder why. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I'm not sharing anything now, so I don't know why it's refusing, but now it's here. Okay. So we are looking at some rules pertaining to the use of pronouns. Now, everything we are doing now is in a way to help us speak English better, right? This is foundation English. We're still doing introduction to grammar. And some of these things that we are talking about, you know them, we know pronouns and all these. but there are some fine things that you may need, new information that you need to learn as we move on, as you progress in your study of the English language. And one of such is the use of pronouns. There are rules as to the choice, or there are rules that you need to respect or follow when you are choosing the pronouns to use in your conversations or in your writing. And I'm going to share just a few of these pronouns that with you. These are examples of rules that I see more and more students violating. So let's see if you find you are found wanting with any of them. So the first rule says that a pronoun must agree with its antecedent in person, number, and gender. If the antecedent is singular, a singular pronoun is used. We've said that pronouns are used to replace nouns. Now, if the noun that you're replacing is singular, then you should use a singular pronoun. If the noun is plural, you should use a plural pronoun. I'm sitting outside and it looks like it's about to rain. So if you hear all the wind blowing, it's because I'm outside. So let's look at some examples. Those cars are nice. Those cars, plural. So the pronoun that is used to replace them in the next sentence is they, plural. John works hard. He would do well. That woman is my teacher. Do you know her? My friend and I are going shopping. Like to join us? So a singular pronoun would replace a singular noun. Male pronoun will replace male noun, and so on and so forth. All right, so it looks like I may have to end this and continue. I'll send you a part 2 so that the wind does not disrupt our recording. So I'll get back to you shortly. All right, so it looks like the wind has cleared somehow, so we can continue. So I was saying that the second rule says that subject pronouns are used when the pronoun is the subject of the sentence, and you can remember this one way that you can remember to use the right subject pronoun. You put it, you ask yourself, did the job? So who did the job? And then is it I or he or she or who or whoever, whatever word is able to fit in that section over there is your pronoun, the subject pronoun. Okay, so if you are replacing a subject noun, you have to use a subject pronoun. If you're replacing an object noun, you use an object pronoun. Okay. Rule number 3 says subject pronouns are also used if they rename the subject. So they are renaming the subject. And this is one instance that people tend to use the wrong pronoun. So subject pronouns follow the verb to be in all its forms. So the verb to be can be is, are, was, were, will be, had been, would have been, is being, was being, all those forms. When you see them, the subject pronoun is what is that comes after it. So it is when you use the expression it is, what should follow is a subject pronoun. It is he, not it is him. It is she, not yes, it is she, not it is her. So when you pick up the phone, if your phone rings and you pick it up and somebody says, please, I want to speak to Elizabeth. And so it is me speaking. May I speak with her? Oh, this is me talking. No, this is she talking. And it is we, not it is us. All right. The subject pronoun is used to rename the subject, the one who is talking, the one who is doing the talking. And it always follows the verb to be in its form. This is one very important thing you need to remember. Now, having said that, sometimes in informal English, people tend to use the object pronoun rather. And this is what we also do a lot. So instead of saying it could have been them, we will say, sorry, instead of saying it could have been they, because the subject is they, we will say it could have been them. Instead of saying it is just I, we say it is just me. But like I'm saying here, many English scholars will tolerate this in spoken casual English. But when it is formal, you need to be careful to use the right pronoun. If it's casual speaking, if it's informal and setting, you can do that. But if not, you should avoid using the object pronoun after the verb to be. Use the subject pronoun in all cases. Rule number 4 says, when possible, rename the subject to avoid using his or her when the antecedent does not indicate gender. If you are using subjects, if you are using a noun or a noun phrase, and you cannot tell from the noun or noun phrase being used whether what you are talking about, the subject is male or female, sometimes what you need to do is to reword it so that you end up using both his and her or either of them. So instead of saying, for instance, each of the students wants his or her or their chance, you can just reword the whole sentence to avoid this complicated construction. So you can say, all the students want their chance. Each of the students wants a chance, all right? Or you can just say, each of the students wants his chance. Like I said in the previous section, his sometimes is used even when we mean female. But if you are writing and you know that the recipient of your writing is somebody who is an advocate for feminism, or somebody who will take offense if you say his when you may be meaning, because you don't know for sure that if the person's female, then reword the whole sentence to avoid trouble. All the students want their chance, and then that is it. You are good to go. The next rule says that singular subjects take singular pronouns and verbs. All right. So the verb too must be singular. Plural subjects take plural pronouns and verbs. So it's wrong to say the women each gave her approval. It is wrong to say the women each gave her approval. Now the women here is plural, so you have to use a plural pronoun. So the correct thing is the women each gave their approval. Another example, the words are and there each ends with a silent vowel. This is wrong. You're talking about the words are and there. These are two plural. So if it is plural, it should take what? A plural verb, not a singular verb. So the words are and there each end with a silent vowel. Now, this rule is overlooked when using the pronoun each, either, and neither, followed by of. So whenever you have each, neither, and either followed by of, then you forget this rule that it should agree with the subject must agree with the pronoun or the verb. It changes. When this happens, you have to change it so that if you have each of or either of or neither of, it doesn't matter what comes after the of. As soon as you use each of, the verb is going to be singular. Each of the verb is going to be singular. So each of the girls sings, well, singular. Even if there are 1,000 girls, because you started with each of, the verb is going to be singular, sings. Either of us is, not either of us are. Neither of them is, not neither of them are. So if you have the construction each of, either of, then even if the subject is plural, the verb is going to be singular. This is different from the previous example that we looked at. Here, we don't have each of. The each is not followed by of. It's just each. And here, there must be an agreement. Subject, verb, pronoun, antecedent, agreement. Okay. The next rule says that if you use either or neither nor, the verb agrees with the closest object. It agrees with the closest